You're listening to Joy 99.7 FM. The show is Joy Business Masterclass, and as has been going on for the past few weeks, we've been talking about social media and how businesses can take advantage of social media. Today with me in the studio is Chris Wala Esikwe, and we're going to be talking about social media policy. Chris, welcome.
Thank you, Kobby. Good to be here again.
Yeah.
We had about 2 weeks break.
Mm-hmm.
We are back now.
Great. So, yeah, unfortunately, I don't think the audience heard you, so maybe you should reintroduce. Anyway, I'm sitting in for the regular host, Yabanafo. So, we will be talking about social media policies and everything about them, the benefits, and why it's important to businesses, right?
Yes, that is what it is.
Okay. So
good to be here again.
Mm-hmm.
And let me say good afternoon to our listeners and people who are viewing us on Facebook Live. So today will be the penultimate episode. Next week will be drawing the curtain on this whole thing we've been doing.
All right.
So today we'll be looking at the place of social media policy in managing the reputation of businesses in these times.
Okay.
And next week we'll wrap up with how to recover from social media failure if it happens.
Right.
If things go south, what do you do? So that is where we'll be going.
Great.
Today. All right.
So as with tradition, I have to play you your song, right?
Yes, do.
And I know it's reggae, although I didn't find the one that you requested for. So I'm going to play one from Buju Banton, Better Days Coming.
That is fine.
Chris and his reggae. Charlie, I could see we were jamming to the, and I'm here like,
reggae
okay,
is life, man.
Is it?
Reggae is life. I mean, if you listen to the philosophy behind the songs of some of these reggae artists, I mean, you just have to love them.
Great.
Reggae is life.
I think I'm going to start really actively listening to reggae music.
You should. I'll pass you a document I did on reggae music in my
wow.
master's studies. You would love it. You'd love it.
I'd like to listen to that.
All right.
So, to the conversation proper. Having a social media policy for your business. First off, what is a social media policy?
Okay, so I'll speak to that shortly. Now, from the start of this program, I've been saying that any business that intends to survive the turmoil of the digital age must be on social media. Now, if you are going to be on social media, you enter there advisedly. Now, no business that intends to do social media to prop up their business, their image, their brand on social media can do so without having in place a policy that guides how the employees of the business must engage on social media.
Right.
It is just a matter of time before things go south on social media. You will least expect it. And when it happens, you do not take control of the narrative in good time, things can be really, really bad. And sometimes the recovery will be too much to do. So it is very critical. Now, this is the thing. Social media has given stakeholders and consumers unprecedented power. In companies, in managing companies' reputations, in shaping companies' reputations. It has lowered the barriers of open conversation. It has heightened awareness people have about your business, your brand, and your activities. The audience today are very well engaged.
Yeah.
They are not the passive, lame duck audience or consumers that used to be. Days of the hypodermic needle theory that says that the recipients of the message only sit down and are hit by the message and are supposed to react in a particular way. It is no longer the case. We do not have consumers of information anymore. We have participants in generating information. So, and a more digitally connected world also means that information about your company is easily accessible to your audiences. They can share it, they can discuss it, and more importantly, they can act upon it more than you can ever imagine in your company's history. So a local story will quickly become a global story. It's on the internet, and search engines are making it pop up all the time. As soon as somebody types anything related to the name of your company, the bad news pops up.
Yeah.
So for this reason, it is critical to listen to the conversation that is taking place around your company, around your brand, its activities, and the programs you run.
Right.
It is relevant to every business. So a policy simply is that set of standardized guidelines for website and digital media usage that would help your employees, management, to be able to take control of the conversation in times of crisis. Now, you don't even need to wait for crisis to happen before you start propping your brand out there. You should be able to get ready before the war begins. So a social media policy is basically that standardized guideline that guides your employees and your management to be ready for days that you least expect.
Great.
Typically, the scope of a standardized policy would be the following. So you would have general and specific digital engagement guides, understanding social media crisis and issues, social media and online crisis prevention, readiness and radar, and we're going to talk a little more about this, and how to respond to crisis when they happen, and reviewing a social media issue or crisis when it does happen.
Okay.
Now, for the purposes of our discussion, and let me also say that the whole concept of social media policy is pretty broad. We will not be able to finish it even in the whole month. So I'll be skipping a number of things, and we'll be hoping that if there are organizations out there that hope to I mean, they shouldn't even hope. It's a must. And they want to get this developed for them in-house, they can get in touch with us so we can have a conversation around it.
Right.
So let me just point out a few guidelines for management and for employees of a typical business, a business that has more than 10 employees. One, there is personal or private profiles or timelines of employees. How do employees engage on these timelines or profiles or accounts versus how do they engage on the company's timelines and accounts? So companies typically will not have any restrictions on how individual employees engage on their timelines. Typically. So Joy FM, you work for the multimedia group. I do not know if Joy FM or multimedia can say to you, don't have a Facebook account in your personal name. No,
they won't.
They won't. But whatever you do online has a way of impacting the brand you work for, especially when anybody can track anything in your profile to where you work. And that is very easy these days.
Yes.
These days, you are creating your profile, and there's this place that asks you to indicate where you work. And people are people do that easily. They want to show off where they work, especially when you create profiles on LinkedIn and on Twitter. You want to show off. You want people to know you work here. So even if it is not on Facebook, and people know your account on LinkedIn, they can go to track and know this guy works for multimedia. And it is difficult for people to separate what you do as an individual on your timeline from the brand you represent. I mean, we have seen this many times. I can cite an in-house example here where one of you is a very good writer, and when he writes, people find it difficult to split his writing from as an individual from the brand he works for. Yeah. So some of these things can be dicey. Now, the company would expect, however, even though they would not be able to gag you from creating your account and do whatever you want to do with it, they expect, however, that you be a worthy ambassador of the company, of the brand, in everything you do. So your private profiles, and I said if they publicly indicate your organization, must be used in a way that does not negatively impact your organization. As an employee, you cannot purport to be speaking for and on behalf of multimedia unless you are so empowered to do. If you are not the PR person for the company, if you are not the head of communications for the company, or you are not otherwise designated to do so, you cannot be using your personal profile. It is your personal profile, we agree. But you cannot use that to be speaking on behalf of the organization. There might be in-house nuances and intricacies if we need to do it, if we need to customize it for various organizations. So you need to make a clear distinction between your personal opinions and company positions when an issue pops up. So for instance, we are all discussing whether or not we need a national cathedral. Does the multimedia organization have an in-house position on that matter?
Nope.
No, maybe, yes, no. Even if they do, it is not out there, we don't know. Do you as an individual, Kobby, have a position on that? Yes, you should be able to have a position on that. You are a citizen of this country. We are encouraged to be citizens, to speak up. So you want to speak up about this. Careful not to make it sound like what you are saying is a position of your company. That is very critical. So you cannot publish any work, including writings, photographs, video footages, whatnot, on your timeline if those are works you produced in your line of duty as a reporter of this organization. So you were sent to go cover the hearing of the latest hearing in Parliament today, the banking saga. There's a hearing going on in camera. So you've been asked to go cover that. The hearing is going on in camera. It is because you don't want the public to know about to have first-hand information about it. So you go in there, you manage to scoop some information which is not for your media organization. You just want to be like, yeah, I'm the one who got this information. So you go and put it out there on your Facebook timeline. You are doing this while you are on duty for multimedia. You cannot do that. If you do, you create an impression as though multimedia has asked you to do that. So you need to be careful. Now, we can go on and on and on and on about what you can do, what you cannot do. Another thing you should be careful about is in the case of resignation of an employee. If an employee decides not to work for multimedia anymore, they cannot purport to be using their titles while they were with multimedia when they are no more here. So you are a night DJ here, and that is on your Facebook timeline. The day you resign from multimedia, take that part of your profile off. So that you don't go do anything, everybody starts thinking you are doing so.
But you can say you are former.
You are former. And I talking about former, well, I used to phone into the Super Morning Show a lot when I was in KNUST, from the days of the Boss Player to Dio to Kobby Nkrumah. During the time of Kobby Nkrumah, I'll call from KNUST and say, I'm Wolanyu calling from KNUST. So for a while, as soon as I mention my name, he'll say from of KNUST. And when I left KNUST, as I continued phoning into the program, and he now changed my profile to Wolanyu, formerly of KNUST. So that's what we used to do.
Yeah.
All right. So that is about your personal timelines. I mean, there's so much we can say about that.
One question though, there's this this trend that you see on social media. Where people will say, opinions expressed here, they issue a disclaimer, and not that of my employer.
We will get there.
Right.
We'll get there where to issue a disclaimer. Now, what do you do if you were on the company's timeline? Of course, Multimedia has Facebook. Joy FM has a Facebook page. So if you are an employee of Multimedia and you go on to the company's page, what can you do? What can you not do? Here again, as an employee, you cannot purport to be speaking for and on behalf of Multimedia on any issue of public interest without the express written approval of somebody who must approve. And again, this is a part, I'm making it quite generic. Maybe in-house, you just need to speak to somebody and say, I want to do this. In other places, it must be a written express approval before you can do that. However, you can share, and now we are using the share button on Facebook. You can share company position or publications on matters that are in the public domain on your timeline. So now you have moved to the company's page. There's something there that the company has put out there in the public domain. You can share it on your private timeline now. So get the difference. You have not generated the content. It is not your position. It is a company's position. You can put it on your timeline now because it's already out there in the public domain. So an employee who wishes to publish any content in connection with or related to their assignments or functions, I indicated that earlier, must seek proper approval and must be so granted before they go ahead. What social media does, interestingly, is that accounts created for and on behalf of the organization must remain the property of the organization. Some organizations let their employees take control of the admin rights of the various platforms they are on, and when those individuals move on, it is difficult to even
get that,
take hold of those admin rights back. The account is going to be there. Unfortunately, when those people leave and they don't hand in the admin rights, the accounts will be there, the account will not be closed, and the organization is forced to create a new account. So you have multiple accounts because you cannot access the old one. So it's another thing you need to. So if you happen to be the admin person for your organization's pages, please, the day you move on, hand in all the admin rights. Don't go with them. You cannot die with the company property. You spoke about disclaimer. As a matter of best practice, when an employee encounters trolls, and you know who trolls are?
Yes.
People who are on social media teasing. I mean, that's the simplest way.
Bullying people.
Bullying people. They are stalkers, they are cyber bullies, etc. If you encounter any of such people on the company's platform, what do you do? It is prudent to engage with them cautiously. But while you do that, be careful not to aggravate an already bad issue. As best practice, you can delete, and I'm speaking this time as though you are the admin and you have the right to so do. So as a matter of best practice, you can delete comments or posts which are discriminatory, whether they discriminate against people of faith or people of gender or whatever. Once the comment is discriminatory, you can delete as a matter of best practice. But I'll tell you under what conditions you can do a deletion.
Okay.
Or whether the comments are obscene or of sexual nature. Or whether the comments threaten or defame an individual or an entity. Some people have had to pay heavy fines for putting their organizations in trouble by the things they say. if the comments violate the intellectual property rights of another party, and you see, that is one area we don't look at a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Online plagiarism. It is very common these days.
Very, very
you
common.
wake up and people are sharing all kinds of things without attributing it appropriately.
Yeah.
Without saying, I mean, the best people do these days is when they copy and post, they put under hashtag copied. Please, that
from
is
where?
Copied from where? From who? That is improper. So,
but what if you don't know the source?
If you don't know the source, I mean, there's a way of saying, I don't know the source. I do not. So you can start off by saying, this is not my content. I am pulling from somewhere and I'm just sharing.
Right.
If the comment promotes illegal activity or commercial products or services which are not related to the topic under discussion, and people do this a lot, they spam you ethically. We call it ethical spamming. So what are we talking about? We are talking about the cathedral, the National Cathedral. Everybody's talking about National Cathedral, and somebody comes to post something on soap in a thread,
like the Malams.
Like they come to
advertise their services,
advertise all kinds of things. I mean, there's a way of doing it ethically. That was what I meant when I said ethical spamming. You can actually start on the same thread like everybody else, and say things about the cathedral as everybody else is saying, and then find a way of weaving in what you want to say. Don't just come and drop things there. So before you delete a post, whether it's on your Facebook or wherever, it is proper to issue a disclaimer.
Right.
So typically, we can say the Multimedia Company Limited reserves the right to remove inappropriate comments, including those that are discriminatory, obscene, or sexual in nature, threaten or defame the individual or entity, violate the intellectual property rights of another party, promote illegal activity or commercial products or services, or are not related to the topic in the original posting. Keep in mind that all your posted comments are public records and subject to disclosure. So once this thing is there, when you take off somebody's post, they don't come fighting you and saying, why did you do you are gagging free speech and so on and so forth.
So on this note, I'm going to announce the phone lines and the WhatsApp line so we can receive some messages. If you're listening to the conversation on social media policies, you can send a message to our WhatsApp number 0244 340437. And if you want to call us, it's 0302 216 541. WhatsApp is 0244 340437. Okay, Chris.
All right. So some of the platforms actually have inbuilt tools to manage this. You don't always need to delete. Sometimes you can report, you can hide, or you can ban the comment or the commentator.
Yeah.
So if you hide, it means the user and their friends will still see their comment, but the public and your page audience won't. If you delete, no one can see at all. If you ban or you block, and these days we like to do the blocking. People are chopping block by heart, left, right, center. If you ban or you block, the person you ban is actually barred from getting onto your page or your timeline.
So they can't see?
They can't see.
Okay.
All right. Okay. So what else can you do or not do? Usually, we need to be very alert when trouble comes. To be able to handle trouble when it comes, you need to set in place specific responsibilities and roles for social media engagement. You need to put in place a team that can handle that when it happens. Crisis will happen. From day one, I said companies that would not suffer social media crisis are the ones that are not on social media. But even they will suffer at some point. Because even though they are not online, their customers are online. So if your customers experience a bad customer service from you, they'll go out there and vent. Thank God for social media. We have not hacked ourselves with cutlasses and clubs in this country.
know, right?
When people get angry, they
They
just
go
go
and
and
vent
vent
on social media.
I recall a blog I read before, and it had something to do with chieftaincy and tradition and so on. And the author was very severe in their remarks about a particular kingdom.
Wow.
If you saw the comments and the engagement on that blog, the heat could literally boil.
I'm sure smoke was probably coming out of your screen.
Look, I said if we had taken that venom offline, there would have been trouble.
Wow. And so we've got a caller on the line. Hello, Stephen.
Yes, Friday.
Hi. Welcome to the show.
Yes, my issue has to do with images people post on their, social media, about, the use of other people's pictures or photographs as their own.
Right.
Or pictures or photographs that are clearly inappropriate.
So basically people infringing on people's
like,
intellectual property.
Hello?
Basically people infringing on people's intellectual property.
No, it's not about someone. I mean, you are, let's say, multimedia, employee. But
Yeah.
the pictures you post on your timelines are inappropriate. I don't know whether I'm it's not about somebody's interest. It's your own picture or photo, but how it is, captured in there is not proper. That's what I'm saying.
Oh, okay.
Yes, or your profile picture is that of a girlfriend or wife or whatever. And you are saying you are spiky, but the picture I'm seeing there is a woman's picture. I don't.
Okay, so misleading pictures then.
Yes.
Okay.
Okay, so what really is your question? Do you want to find out if it is okay to so do or not?
I think he's
off
gone.
the line.
Yeah, he's
okay,
off the
so
line.
let me just quickly address
Sure.
that. First of all, there must be an in-house definition for what is appropriate and what is not appropriate. If I'm a man and I put a female's photo on my timeline, if it's my wife's photo or my daughter's photo, I mean, how can that be inappropriate?
Yeah.
Unless it is a nude photo, in which case, and my profile can lead anyone to identify me with the organization I work for. I am putting myself, my family, and the organization I work for into disrepute. So that should be addressed. I mean, some of these things are simple common sense, actually. You should be able to know.
Yeah.
I mean, people who think, oh, it is my timeline. Please, it is your timeline, but it's also a public space. Look, social media is, like they can say, it's a kwanhu. It's roadside. It's like a roadside. So you can't be doing everything and say, it is my timeline. And when people post things and others comment, they go and say, I mean, it is my timeline. If you don't like it, you can go and post yours. It's your timeline, but the space you are posting is not your space. It's for everybody. So once I can see, I mean, be ready to take feedback from me.
Right.
Now, we want to go down quickly into the issue of social media crisis management. We are going to start this, and I hope we'll be able to finish next week. Crises on social media do not happen out of the blue. They often owe their origin to an issue or an incident that has not been adequately addressed. It starts small, people, it's okay, it's nothing, it's not going to degenerate into anything. Now, if you leave it for too long, it festers for too long, it can become a huge problem. So, to be able to manage crisis properly, there are a number of things we should look at. First of all, what is an issue? What is an incident? And when does an incident degenerate into a crisis? So an issue, and for our specific purposes, is usually the subject of an ongoing debate, often spread by media or social media, which occasionally peaks as it gathers momentum or as it gathers attention. At this stage, it can become an incident or a crisis. So it starts off as an issue everybody is debating. The hottest debate in town today is the National Cathedral. So it starts gradually. Maybe it is about one customer who didn't like something one of your employees did. So they start talking about it gradually. Before long, it gathers momentum, it becomes an incident, and it can grow into a crisis. What is an incident? An incident is an unexpected event that has been triggered by a deviation from internal or external standards. What happened at that savings and loans organization, we all know, I don't want to repeat the name. It wasn't something anybody was expecting. It happened out of the blue. I am sure what happened to the lady wasn't one of their standards. It wasn't a normal practice. It just happened out of the blue. That is why companies need policies and need to train their employees on the policies, because it will happen when you least expect it.
Yeah.
When they woke up that morning and were going to work, none of them thought the day was going to end that way. But it did happen. And thank God for smartphones. Somebody takes the video, shares it, and the rest is history now. So incidents can happen. At what point do incidents become crisis? So for the specific purpose of an in-house policy, a crisis can be an event that threatens the image and value of a company or a brand. An event that threatens the image and safety of its employees. Or an event that has the potential of polarizing the public.
Right.
If it falls within any of these definitions, it's already on the path of becoming a crisis. So, when the crises do happen or before they happen, how do you prepare to manage them? 4 things you should keep in mind. Readiness. You need to be ready. How do you get ready? You put your team and protocols together. You need to assemble your social media team and define their responsibilities. A major component of every successful crisis management online is getting the right people to be ready when crisis strikes. So in a typical core social media crisis management team, who should be there? Depending on the organogram of the organization, PR, the head of PR or head of communications, or depending on what nomenclature they use, corporate communications and public affairs, should be a part of that. Then there should be a social media manager. And for here, let me say, do not relinquish the role of a social media manager to a national service person. Please, I do not wish to sound condescending. National service people are great. I was once a national service person. But please, it is too serious to be left at that level. Hire serious people who understand the nuances of social media, pay them and let them do this work. Head of HR should be there because it's going to be something that necessarily will affect employees at some point. Head of IT should be there, and then head of legal or whoever is designated from the legal department should be a part of that team. Then there is a relevant subject matter expert who is co-opted from time to time depending on what the crisis is. So if it's a crisis about product marketing, head of marketing could nominate somebody, or head of marketing themselves could be co-opted onto the platform. If it's something that has to do with labor, you want to pick somebody with expertise in labor issues to be on it. If it's something that has to do with safety of your product, somebody from the safety department or the technical department should be co-opted. So those people are not permanent members of the crisis committee. As and when it affects their department,
then they come in.
You bring them in. So every one of them has a key responsibility. So for instance, the head of PR is the team leader in the social media crisis communication team. What will be their roles? They'll be the ones who overview the rest of the team. They will coordinate with the heads of other units. They'll be the ones who will manage approval and communication with both internal and external stakeholders. If you have a social media manager on the team, their key role will be to monitor online conversations as required. Oftentimes in crisis, the monitoring process is 24 hours. You cannot take your eyes off the pedal. I mean, when companies have an in-house policy, when we do policies for companies, we train their staff, and we also do mock crisis. We stage crisis and we take them through so they know what to do when it eventually happens. Like we do fire drills for organizations. This is something that must be taken seriously. So all the various team members have key roles to play as and when the issues happen.
You have a question here. So someone says, people share website links and stories on Facebook, and the picture attached to the shared link normally doesn't correspond with the story, but the correct image shows on the website. Why is that so on Facebook?
I think is it a Facebook thing? Is there some other people using the wrong pictures to?
Because according to the person, when you go to the website, then the image is correct, but when you share it on Facebook, then it changes.
I think that is more of an ICT thing than
a social media thing. Yeah.
Yes. Okay. So a quick a quick response to some of the nagging issues that will normally pop up in social media crisis. Like I said, we won't be able to go through every single thing. At what point do you respond to issues when they come up on your timeline? Do you need to give a feedback? Do you need to answer? Do you need to ignore? At what point? So when consumers feel, for instance, aggrieved about your services and you ignore them, they are more likely to find outlets and vent. So as a matter of best practice, in crisis, you respond. If, one, it is helpful for rational feedback, you respond to address the comments thoroughly, openly, and honestly. You respond to follow up with action. And be careful not to extend the discussion to areas that have not been implicated in the original trouble. So if people have issues with one of your brands, don't go take the discussion into other brands. There are groups of companies that have various brands under them. Multimedia has Joy FM, Love FM, and so on and so forth. If there's trouble with Insura FM in Kumasi, please be careful not to implicate Adom FM. You can get it messed up.
Okay.
Do not respond if the feedback is irrational. There are people who say things to you to annoy you.
Yeah.
They don't make a case that sounds logical. All they want to do is to draw you into an extended dialogue and argument. Some of those people, ignore them. Don't respond if their attempt is to just draw you into a conversation that is not good for your brand. So make sure everybody in the company knows you have decided to ignore. Otherwise, as a company, you still are ignoring, and one of your employees gets tagged on that comment, and they go to respond. I recall in one of my previous working lives, I woke up in the morning and I had missed many calls, and I was wondering what is happening. And then I go onto Facebook and realize I've been tagged in a comment about one of our products that supposedly contains some broken bottles and so on and so forth. And this was a product that wasn't even on the Ghana market at the time. I mean, it still hasn't come onto the Ghana market. It was something that happened in France, and it happened in the year 2002. And the product implicated was withdrawn from the market. Somebody fished that information from online for whatever reason, put it out there, and started scaring people. I rushed to the office, and my boss and I decided, look, this is not something we should waste our time on. Before we knew it, it became bigger because some employees who didn't even know what the thing was about were there fighting the people who were posting the thing. It can get murkier. So be very, very careful. In crisis, it is critical to do monitoring daily or weekly, depending on the level of the crisis. What would determine what kind of response? We normally classify crisis according to certain parameters, according to their relevance, their sensitivity, mobilization, volume, and velocity. So whether or not you respond to a particular thing, you weigh it against these 5 parameters or criteria, and you should also assess who is making those comments or who is drawing your attention into this kind of engagement? How do you assess the people? You assess their reach, you assess their authority, their aggression, their engagement, and their audience. So there are two clear areas. You are assessing the message, you're also assessing the messenger. And there's a way of scoring them. There's a mathematics that is involved with this. So you score the assessment of the issue under each of the criteria I listed earlier, whether they are low, whether they are medium, or whether they are high. So is the issue the person raised of low relevance? Is it of low sensitivity? Does it have a low level of mobilization, or is it capable of amassing people behind it immediately? What is the level of the numbers it's able to pull? And at what speed will it go? Now, if it is a low, if you adjudge it to be low, you score it 1. If it is medium, you score it 2. If it is high, you score it 3. So finally, you add up the total score. I mean, so the various parameters, and it will give you a total score of 15. Now, the lower the score, the easier it will be to manage. But as the score goes to the right side, higher,
the higher it is.
To the red side of the timeline, you should start getting worried.
So unfortunate we've run out of time. I mean, 1 hour comes so quickly.
I'm surprised.
I know, right? You are just getting started.
So let me just wrap up this way. We will not be able to finish this, even if we give ourselves 1 month. So let's just say to organizations and businesses that are interested in getting this done, to get in touch on 0243 996 772. 0243 996 772. Next week, we'll just wrap up with, if social goes south, what do you do? If things go wrong, what do you do? We'll just wrap up with that.
Okay. So this has been Joy Business Masterclass, and we've been talking about social media policy with Chris Walanyo Esikpe. My name is Kobby Spiky Nkrumah, and I've been sitting in for Yao Banafo. Make a date with us again next week. Shout out to my producer, Saminiwa.
Coming up.